I could reply, Ethan was reaching out, laughing, and the man scooped him up. I could only stare as he stood with his back to the wind, holding my child, jiggling him easily on his hip.
A fine boy.
And an energetic one. I thought to take him for a walk to give his nanny a bit of a rest. She has less trouble with my 2 other children combined than with young Ethan.
You have other children?
Yes, a girl, a year older than Ethan, and a baby not quite 1. We only arrived for the season yesterday. Do you live on the island?
For now. Will you pose for me, Mrs. Calhoun?
I blushed. But beneath the embarrassment was a deep and dreamy pleasure. Still, I knew the impropriety and Fergus's temper, so I refused, politely, I hoped. He did not persist, and I am ashamed to say that I felt a keen disappointment. When he gave Ethan back to me, his eyes were on mine, a deep slate gray that seemed to see more than my face, perhaps more than anyone had seen before. He bid me good day, so I turned to walk with my child back to the towers, my home and my duties. I knew as surely as if I had turned to look that he watched me until I was hidden by the cliff. My heart thundered. Chapter 1. Bar Harbor, 1991. Trenton St. James III was in a foul mood. He was the kind of man who expected doors to open when he knocked, phones to be answered when he dialed. What he did not expect, and hated to tolerate, was having his car break down on a narrow 2-lane road 10 miles from his destination. At least the car phone had allowed him to track down the closest mechanic. He hadn't been overly thrilled about riding into Bar Harbor in the cab of the tow truck while strident rock had bellowed from the speakers and his rescuer had sung along, off-key, in between bites of an enormous ham sandwich.
Hank. You just call me Hank, ya? The driver had told him, and then took a long pull from a bottle of soda. CC'll fix you up all right and tight. Best damn mechanic in Maine, you ask anybody.
Trent decided under the circumstances he'd have to take just call me Hank's word for it. To save time and trouble, he'd had the driver drop him off in the village with directions to the garage and a grimy business card Trent studied while holding it gingerly at the corners. But as with any situation Trent found himself in, he decided to make it work for him. While his car was being dealt with, he made 6 calls to his office back in Boston, putting the fear of God into a flurry of secretaries, assistants, and junior vice presidents. It put him in a slightly better frame of mind. He lunched on the terrace of a small restaurant, paying more attention to the paperwork he took from his briefcase than the excellent lobster salad or balmy spring breeze. He checked his watch often, drank too much coffee, and, with impatient brown eyes, studied the traffic that streamed up and down the street. 2 of the waitresses on lunch shift discussed him at some length. It was early April, several weeks before the height of the season, so the restaurant wasn't exactly hopping with customers. They agreed that this one was a beaut, from the top of his dark blonde head to the tips of his highly polished Italian shoes. They agreed that he was a businessman, and an important one, because of the leather briefcase and spiffy gray suit and tie. Plus, he wore cufflinks, gold ones. They decided, as they rolled flatware into napkins for the next shift, that he was young for it, no more than 30. Outrageously handsome was their unanimous vote, while they took turns refilling his coffee cup and getting closer looks. Nice, clean features, they agreed, with a kind of polished air that would have been just a tad slick if it hadn't been for the eyes. They were dark and broody and impatient, making the waitresses speculate as to whether he'd been stood up by a woman, though they couldn't imagine any female in her right mind doing so. Trent paid no more attention to them than he would have to anyone who performed a paid service. That disappointed them. The whopping tip he left made up for it nicely. It would have surprised him that the tip would have meant more to the waitresses if he had offered a smile with it. He relocked his briefcase and prepared to take the brisk walk to the mechanic at the